Good morning, Year 5. It was good to see some of you on our Zoom meeting last week. So today's learning, we're going to start with some reading, and slightly different to last week, we're just going to focus on 3 skills this week rather than looking at a text. We'll carry on with the text the week after, but for this week we're just going to focus on 3 skills. So our first skill that we're going to look at today is retrieval. Now, if you remember back to our lessons in retrieval, retrieval means to go and fetch something from the text, like a golden retriever would do. You go and fetch the ball or stick that you throw for it and bring it back. So that's all you're doing really. You're looking at in the text and bringing those words back. So let's have a look at some of the techniques of skimming and scanning that we've looked at before. So if you just pause the video, you can have a quick look at the strategies for scanning the text. So remember, when you are scanning the text, keep the word or information in your mind when you're actually reading it, and let your eyes quickly run over the text. And then if you haven't found it, you can always go from bottom to top, so going back up through the text just to find that piece that you're looking for. So some strategies for skimming the text, and this is going to be really important. The text that I've given you this week is a guide dog text, which is obviously an information text, so it's really important that you look at the subheadings, which will obviously help you answer some of the questions. It will direct you to where the information could be found. Read the titles, look at the important information, maybe dates and unusual words, maybe names. Just make sure you're understanding those before you carry on any further. So let's have a look at this text then to begin with. If we read it through together, then we'll answer some questions on it at the end. So introduction. Tennis has become one of the world's richest sports, with the big tournaments attracting huge television coverage and sponsorship. However, all you need is a tennis racket and a ball. Thousands play it every week in leisure centres across the country. How it began. Tennis was played in France about 900 years ago, with people using their palms of their hands to hit the ball. No one really knows how the scoring started, but deuce is based on the French word deux, meaning two, when 2 people are on the same point. British tournament Wimbledon is probably the most famous tennis tournament of all. It was first held in 1877 and is the only major championship still played on a grass court. The most exciting moment of recent years was in 2013 when Andy Murray became the first British men's singles winner since 1936. Okay, so we've read it through. Let's have a look at these 4 questions that we're going to answer. So the first question to answer is, when was tennis played? Well, if we look at our text, you can see the little subheadings in bold. How it began is a good place to start really, when tennis was first played. And we can see that our answer, if we read a little bit further on, tennis was first played in France about 900 years ago. So that would be our answer for question 1. So again, question 2, what was the word deux mean? Well, I've seen that in the text, so scan over the text, find it, and you can see it there. And remember, when we're looking for a meaning of the word, we need to read around. So we might read before it and after it. And in this example, it actually tells you where the answer. So it actually means 2. You can see that right next to it. And then, how many years ago did the Wimbledon Championships begin? Now, just be careful on this question. You do need to use a little bit of maths in this. So again, scanning the subheadings to begin with, you can see that you've got Wimbledon in there, so it's going to be probably written in this paragraph. You can see just below that it says it was first held in 1877. So you just need to work out what the date is today from 1877, how many years has passed since. Okay, and then the final question then, what equipment do players use now that the original French game didn't have. So you see what I've underlined there. They used to use the palms of their hands to hit the ball. So what we want to know is what they use now. Well, for those that know tennis, you see in the introduction section, it says that all you need is a tennis racket and ball. So your answer for that one would be tennis racket. So let's just check our answers and see how we've got on with that. So we said 900 years ago, so we got that one correct. First, what does the word "de" mean? That means two, and depending on when they wrote this text, they worked it out as 141 years ago. And then obviously the last one, what they're missing is a racket. Okay, so have a go at your retrieval questions in your packs. It should all be about guide dogs. Okay, and on to maths today. We're going to carry on with our decimals work. And today we're going to be looking at adding decimals within 1. So remember, within 1 just means between 0 and 1 whole. So a couple of ways of doing this. We're going to use a number line to begin with to solve these. And you can see we've got 0.5 add 0.3. So you can see I put my two numbers on the number line. I've just put them on top of each other for now. And we're going to use the number line to add them up. So moving on to a new number line, what we're going to do now, we're going to place them on the number line. So we've got 0.5 there. And we're going to place 0.3 next to it because we're adding it on to 0.5. And you can sort of begin to see what our answer might be if you look at that number line now. And if we place it on the screen, you can see, yeah, it's 0.8. So just to finish off our number sentence, you would write 0.5 plus 0.3 equals 0.8. Okay, we could solve these with a part-whole diagram. So what we're saying on this diagram is all of your bubbles will add up to 1. So in other words, what's missing from the diagram to make it all add up to 1? So what we need to ask ourselves is, we need to add up 0.3 and 0.1 first, and then we can begin to work out what's missing. So if we look at this diagram now, you can see that I've solved this. So we've got 0.3 add 0.1 equals 0.4. So if we take that away from 1, because that's what's remaining and that's what's left, that's the number that's missing, you get 0.6. Okay, and moving on to the column method now. So what's really important when we do in column method, particularly with decimals, with any column method, but particularly with decimals, is that we need to make sure that the decimal points are lined up really well. So you can see that I've got my tenths lined up, I've got my units lined up, I've got my decimals lined up, and they're all the place values right. If they're not in the right place, you're going to get an incorrect answer. So what I've done on this slide is I've put that 0 in that thousandths column. Now, we don't necessarily need to put that in, particularly for an addition sum, but you may need that for a subtraction calculation later on, maybe in tomorrow's lesson. So it's good practice to put that in, just so everyone's clear that there is no thousandths in that column. So we're going to go ahead and add these up. Remember, we're starting in the thousandths column, that's the furthest column on the right. And we're going to say 0 plus 2 is 2, 3 plus 5 is 8, and 3 add 4 is 7. Put our decimal point back in, and then 0 add 0 is 0. So our answer would be 0.782. Okay, and on to writing then. So before you start this part of the lesson, it's really important that you watch the titanium video because it's going to be based around that. So it's David Guetta's titanium music video. Okay, and we're going to look at today using a range of sentence openers, mainly to vary our sentences to engage the reader as best we can. And as I said before, make sure you've watched the video because it's going to be linked to it and it will help you use the correct, because we need to be using appropriate sentence openers for what we're trying, for the atmosphere that we're trying to convey. And you'll spot that in the very beginning of the video. So we're focusing on the starting point of that video. Okay, so in your packs you will see that you've got lots of different ways to start sentences, and I think there's 8 different ways that we could start sentences, and we're only going to be focusing on one sentence today, and that's that one that you can see on the screen now. It's I held my face in my hands, and we're just going to add a sentence opener to that each time, just as a practice. And in your patch you'll see that you've got a new sentence, a different sentence for you to have a go at the different ways of adding some sentence openers. So we're going to start with fronted manner adverbial. So manner means how we do something. So if you've watched the video, you can see that he's obviously not particularly happy. So if we link it back to what he's actually doing, he's holding his face in his hands. So what he might do is he's, as my hands shook uncontrollably. So that's how he's doing it. It's how he's holding his face in his hands. Okay, another one, fronted time adverbial. So quite self-explanatory. This is we're going to give an element of time to the opener in this one, and again try and make it appropriate to the text. So for this one we could have for what seemed like forever. Obviously he's not sure what's happened. Time might be going slowly for him. So then we try and convey that point to the reader using that fronted adverbial there. Next one, we could add an emotion to it. Now this is really important that you choose the correct emotion for him. He's obviously, if you've watched the whole video, he probably didn't mean to do it, so he might have a sense of guilt. So rather than just putting guilty, comma, I held my face in my hands, I've just tried to increase the visual effect for the reader. So with a torrent of guilt running through me, I held my face in my hands. So again, we're just trying to extend those openers as much as possible, just to increase the reader's enjoyment, basically. And then the next one is a double up. So we're going to give 2 maybe adjectives together, again just to emphasize the point for the reader. And I've chosen, again this could be an emotion, but I've chosen some feelings for him. So scared and petrified, I held my face in my hands. Remember the comma on each of these is a comma because it separates it from the main clause. Remember the main clause is always in black, that I held my face in my hands. Okay, we could start with a simile. So remember, a simile is when we compare something to something else, give a comparison. And going on the theme of him feeling frightened, like a rabbit caught in headlights, comma, I held my face in my hands. And then we could start with an ing word. So, and again, I've tried to extend this one slightly. So he might be worrying about what he's done. So I've started with that as our opener. So worrying about what I'd done, I held my face in my hands. And then finally, we could start with a subordinate clause. Remember, the other fronted adverbials are types of subordinate clauses, but subordinate clauses tend to be slightly longer, and they often start with a conjunction such as although or even though. And I've gone with, although I knew I had to leave quickly, I held my face in my hands. Okay, so you will, in your packs, you will see that you've got a sentence of your own to hope. So you'll have a main clause, and you're going to try and add those styles like you just see me do as opener. So at the end of it you should have 8 sentences with front adverbials, and just don't forget those commas to separate it from the main clause, the main sentence.